Joining Aimee to discuss the novels, Ploi Pirapokin. Ploi is the nonfiction editor at Newfound Journal and the co-editor of The Greenest Gecko, and the anthology of new Asian fantasy forthcoming from Wesleyan University Press in 2021. Her work is featured in Tor.com, Apogee Journal, The Offing, the Bellingham Review, Fiction International, and more. She lives in San Francisco. And Aimee Bender is the author of the novels The Color Master, The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake, a New York Times bestseller, An Invisible Sign of My Own, and of the collections The Girl in the Flammable Skirt and Willful Creatures. Her works have been widely anthologized and have been translated into 16 languages. She lives in Los Angeles. So just a couple of house items before we get started. You're muted, obviously, but I encourage you to show Aimee and Ploi lots of love in the chat. Also, if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to ask them in the chat at any point, as we will have time for Q&A at the end of the program. Finally, if you don't have a copy of the Butterfly Lampshade and you'd like to purchase one, you can do that through Booksmith. As I mentioned earlier, we have a few signed copies remaining, and I think I'll drop that link for that in the chat. I think that's it for me. Thank you all so much for being here. Ploi, especially, thank you for doing this. And Aimee, congratulations on the book and welcome.
Hey, see my unmuted. Yes, thank you so much, Evan, for having me. And thank you so much, Ploi, for being here with me. Just a couple words on the Booksmith. I used to live in San Francisco so long ago that my rent was $425 to share an apartment with someone, and I had a parking space. So it feels like it was 1902, you know, like it was 1991, but it was really, so anyway, and I mean, it's unbelievable, right? $425, it was shocking. But I would walk, it was in the inner Sunset, and I would walk by the park, and I would walk into the Haight. It was just like my standard walk, and I would go to the Booksmith, and I would look a lot at literary journals, and it was like really well stocked with literary journals, and I was just starting to send out my stories, and it was just like the neighborhood. It was that and 9th Avenue Books were the two neighborhood bookstores that I would go to a lot, and I just loved it. So it's such, and I would go to readings there, and so it just feels like a thrill to be visiting. And although it's not in person, I really appreciate all of you coming virtually and being here. And I just want to say too about Ploi that I've had such a pleasure reading some of her stories online and how amazing they are and how like beautifully styled and detailed and fresh and original and just wonderful. So I'm so thrilled that they asked you and you could do it, and thank you. And I am not in San Francisco, I am in LA. So, but I was there for a few years it was the recession of the early 90s. So it was before the tech boom. So it was like a very different city, you know, and it was a wonderful time to be there, although, you know, difficult in terms of financial stuff, but also in some ways easier because the prices were so much lower. So, you know, the city's changed so much. Okay, so also Ploi graciously agreed to read a scene with me. I've been asking my co-hosts if they're willing to read a scene of dialogue with me as the kind of reading portion of the event, because the book has these sort of disembodied dialogues spread throughout, and where there aren't any dialogue tags or sort of scenic exposition. It's pure dialogue like a play. And she agreed. And so we're gonna read the opening chapter. She's gonna be actually two characters, but I think you'll be able to know when it switches. And I don't think you need any information because it is the opening. All right, good?
Yes.
Okay.
We cannot tend to her. There is something wrong with her.
What do you mean? What is wrong with her?
We do not know. Something.
She seems like such a normal little girl to me. Last visit.
It is hidden.
Did she do anything? Did she do something bad?
No.
Then what?
We cannot handle her. I cannot.
What do you mean by that? Is she misbehaving?
No.
Is she getting in trouble at school?
You have to come get her.
I don't understand.
You are the godparents. You have to come. That is your job.
You are alive, Elaine.
I'm telling you, I can't do it.
Where's that new guy you were telling me about?
Camping.
Is he coming back?
I don't know.
Are you going to do something, Elaine?
I could call social services. Maybe I will. Are they listed? Will they do foster care if other family is still available?
Can you put her on the phone?
No.
Is she nearby?
She's right here. She's looking at me.
Can you tell her to come on the phone?
Francie, dear, your Aunt Minnie wants to speak to you.
Hello, Francie.
Hello.
Francie, are you okay?
Yes.
You've been listening to our conversation.
Yes.
Your mother is very worried about you. Do you think you might be doing anything wrong?
No.
Have you been going to school?
Yes.
Are you behaving properly in school?
Yes.
Are you going to bed on time?
Yes.
I have to tell you, I'm more worried about your mother. Do you think she might be getting sick again?
Yes.
Can you tell me what she's doing?
No.
You can tell me. I know she's probably listening, but it's okay, really. She knew I would ask you. Is she hurting you in any way at all?
No.
Is she dressed?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Are you feeling okay?
Yes.
Do you need me to come up there?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Can you tell me what you mean by yes, as in why?
No.
Is your mom's friend there?
No.
He's out of town.
I don't know.
Is anyone else there?
No.
Is your mother hurting herself?
No.
Sweetie, I'm so sorry. I just can't come this time. Not right now. I'm too pregnant. I'm not allowed to go on a plane. Your uncle can, though. You want your uncle to come?
No.
Oh, Francie, who is the best grown-up for you to call?
It's me again, Min. She dropped the phone. She's standing by the wall now. She puts her nose right up against the wall. It's touching the wall.
What is happening over there?
Like she is talking to the wall. She has this look, Min.
Kids have looks.
No, other kids don't have this look.
Elaine, she can hear the whole conversation, for God's sake.
Like she is judging me all the time.
Kids don't judge. Not like that.
She does.
You're still on the Abilify?
I cannot be around her. There's something in her. There is a bug in her. I cannot even trust myself around her. Are you listening to me?
Yes, I'm sending Stan up the minute he gets home. Morning flight.
Not Stan, you.
I can't fly. What do you mean, a bug?
A bug in her, something crawling inside her.
Can she stay somewhere else? Where can she stay?
I don't know.
A friend?
I don't like her friends.
A friend of yours?
She loves her babysitter.
Ask the babysitter, of course, tomorrow. Or I'll call her too. We can both call her, okay? This is the one who also works at the school.
Trina.
I have her number. We'll work something out, honey. You have to call your doctor. We'll both call the doctor.
I know I should. I know I do.
And I will too. So that's a start. We have a plan then.
We do?
We'll both make some calls in the morning, okay? Let's go over the plan. What are you going to do tomorrow?
I am going to call my doctor.
Good. And
I'm going to call my doctor.
And if you feel able, ask the babysitter.
Right. And I will ask the babysitter.
What are you going to ask the babysitter?
If she will take my sweet girl, Francie. But what do I mean again? Where will she take her?
You know what? I'll call Shrina. Don't worry about that. You take care of yourself. Maybe Francie can stay with her for a couple days while we get you feeling better. Do you know where she lives?
She is very young.
Francie?
The babysitter.
It's just until Stan can get up there. I'll tell her he'll be coming as soon as he can.
How many months are you again?
8.5. So that's the plan for tomorrow. But what about tonight?
Tonight? Exactly.
Does she have a lock on her door?
Her bedroom door? Yes, she does. She asked for it.
What do you mean? She asked for a lock?
Last year for her birthday.
You're kidding me. Did she ask for anything else?
Is that odd?
Just a lock?
Yes.
Unbelievable. But okay, she's a smart girl. It's very useful. From the inside?
Yes.
How about you?
We can both lock our doors from the inside.
Okay, you need to do that then. Why don't you do that as soon as we get off the phone? Use the bathroom first, then go to bed. You'll call me tomorrow morning.
Yes.
You'll call the doctor.
Yes.
You'll call me if you need anything, absolutely anything.
Yes.
Tell Francie goodbye. Tell her I love her.
You're on speaker. She can hear you.
Jesus. Goodbye, Francie. Did you hear that about locking your door?
Yes.
I love you, Francie.
She doesn't say I love you.
I'll say it anyway. She doesn't have to say it back. I love you, Francie.
Goodbye, Min. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too, Elaine. We'll figure this out.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too, Elaine. Go to your room now, honey. Good night. Thank you, Ploi.
Thank you. What a start. I don't even I think this book for me is really about those who live or have lived in that constant space of negotiating reality and relationships with those that you care about. And to quote the protagonist, Francie, from page 126, I was in active psychosis. I swallowed psychosis. And I was so drawn to her fierceness as a character, since from such a young age at 8 and through her journey through the novel as she grows up and gets through college and a job. And, there's this theme that orbits your writing, I think, that is shown here and in your other works too, the importance of being heard and believed. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, is this something that's important to you, and what do you hope your readers would resonate with after finishing this novel?
Thank you. And I think, I'm sorry, I'm trying to deal with the sun.
Yeah.
I think it will slowly, hopefully, I don't know, it's fine. I think I do feel very strongly about this importance of being maybe seen and heard, and maybe it's amplified by things happening in the world that don't feel believable in the sort of, here we go, that's how I'll do it, in the traditional senses. And I think when I think about the sort of spectrum of things I was trying to, like the ingredients that were the soup of the book, that I did want to have characters dealing with a kind of blurring between reality and fantasy, but in different ways. And been trying to articulate this to myself as I begin to talk about the book, but I think it's the presence of having Elaine there dealing with her own psychotic episodes where these things do become blurred for her in a very real way and in a very frightening way. And then Francie, who's dealing with kind of confusion maybe about the power of her own thoughts, in not a psychotic way, but in an anxious way. And what is that like to have those two minds together in a household? And where does imagination fit, and where does kind of the uncanny fit with that? So it's like wanting to sort of mush these things together and populate the world in that way, and then kind of see what happens. And think about this idea, like this concept we all have, the Toy Story concept of the toys coming alive when we leave the room, but how we know that they're not coming alive, and yet imaginatively we might think that they do come alive. And what is that? And how is that so different, and yet has a relationship to, in some ways, another kind of blurring. And so I think in that way, and when you say about things being noticed or things being seen, maybe wanting to feel like all the characters get some sense of their voice, hoping that their voice gets heard on the page in some way or another. Wanting Elaine's, the mother's experience, to be her own experience on the page, even though it is, less known to many people. So.
Because I was definitely struck by the moments where Francie sort of is like, this is really what happened, this is real. And she's so, I think, determined, to get that through. And it was so heartbreaking in the way when other people are telling her, about her mother not wanting to see her or being incapable at certain points. For me, as somebody who loves reading, fantasy and sort of to see where those elements merge, I was so excited to flip through the book to find the moments where she meets the butterflies or she meets the beetle and the rose. And that yet when she does tell her mother about meeting it, she says that she swallows the butterfly down with her drink. And I think I speak for all Aimee Bender stans. We're always in awe about how you're able to bring this universal feeling of love, sadness, and anger in these seemingly small, generic environments, but yet they're so unique and sort of pivoting moments. So I wonder, what is your writing and revision process like to capture these moments and in something as large as a novel?
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to hear that. And I have two answers. There's like a two-pronged thing, because to go back to something that you were saying about, there's moments where Francie is sort of trying to push a little bit aggressively towards her mother, a kind of reality check that her mother can't do, like it's not going to work. But I think in that, and this isn't directly, there's no line about this in the book, but it's something that I was thinking about as I went through the revision process, was just if there's fragility of any kind, really, I think in a parent that the child senses, like a additional fragility than the usual basic vulnerability of humanness, I think it can make the child feel a little extra powerful. Like there's this sort of imbalance. And I think I wanted Francie to be a little confused about how much harm she could do to her mother, what was her responsibility, what wasn't, and have all of that get a little blurry too. Because her mother, as is present in the scene that we read, her mother is alarmed by her. She's not sure what her daughter is, and what is her daughter then absorbing of that and thinking of herself, like all of that is just interesting material to me. Like what's our internal, what are those sort of internal, monstrousnesses, and what are the frightening things outside, and like, how do we balance those things? Not like there's an answer to that, but so, and then in terms of this idea of like the dailiness, I guess, of the magic, is that I feel like the thing I always sort of come back to that I find really reassuring as a writer is that if you write outside of realism in some way, or if you're moving into some space, then usually the magical thing is very physical. Like I actually think, like when you think of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's The Very Old Man with Enormous Wings, you have like the most physical story talking about the wings and like the feathers and what do they feed him? They're like, maybe we'll feed him mothballs. Like what are the things that we would do if someone landed in our town and had these sprouted wings off their back? And it's such a model. And same with the Metamorphosis in Kafka, which is just like, that story is so physical. It's just so buggy in all its bug details. And so I feel like in some ways it feels like a secret writing cheat without even realizing it, which is just that like, then I had a butterfly to deal with and she wanted to take the butterfly, so she swallowed it. And then she had a butterfly inside her. And what did that mean? And then there was a beetle, and the thing became literal. And in some ways that's how magical stuff feels to me on the page, is that it is a literal object that you can then work with. And the metaphorical meaning, as long as I'm working with the physical thing, all the metaphorical meaning can accrue on its own and can be something for the reader to like think on and hopefully feel. But that my job as a writer is to make the thing as physical and real as possible. And so in that way, the revision process is a lot about sort of trying to make those moments feel really daily, like you're saying, like trying to make them fit with a cup of coffee and a dead beetle, and let them exist together, because I do think there's something that feels true about the world and our sort of dream life overlaid over our daily life.
Mm-hmm. And in this process, because you do section the book out into, it was like tent, wait, I wrote it down. It was like tent, butterfly, rose, beetle, locks, and it's like these images and yet have their own metaphorical meaning. I guess, what did they mean to you as you were putting the book together, and from things that you believe about them as symbols, and also from maybe other works that inspired you or other stories?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's so many, when I think of any kind of magical storytelling, it does feel like I really feel tangibly those objects, those things. I was rereading Beloved last year. I think today is Toni Morris, the anniversary of her death. And so I was kind of going through, I reread Beloved and was like amazed at how much I had felt affected by it. But when you think, like, I feel like this is a little bit of a spoiler about Beloved, so I feel cautious about it. But just like the magical step that she takes is so incredible and so embodied. Like the character is so fully a person of a very specific, anyway, I don't, I just want to, if you haven't read it, it's just so amazing. But that being another moment, and it's just, they're plentiful. Like, I think in a way that I think for me is harder with realistic fiction, like you're sort of bound by the real world and you don't have these tangible things to play with in a certain way. And like for the tent, she constructs the sort of memory tent, and that was kind of just like where I wanted to go, and I could see it really clearly, and it felt like that was the space she was going to go in. But I did have kind of doubts, like, this is, usually they say careful of backstory because it drains the drama and you should have more happening in the moment. And I was like, all the drama feels like it's packed in the past. That's just like where it feels true in this book. So then there's a very quiet present where she is constructing a tent to sit inside. But then like these physical spaces ended up feeling quite important, and they felt like the only thing I feel like I can trust is like, if I'm interested in it, some readers will find it interesting. Plenty won't, and that's okay. But I feel like that is sort of my baseline of trust, is like, I have to lean into my interest. And if I'm interested in rereading, if I go back to the work and I find it compelling the next day, and I still want to write about this tent and this character just sitting in a tent, all right then, that's what it'll be.
I think it's such a moment of hope, not to spoil the book, but it was like a moment I was like, will she make it? In that.
In the going into the tent?
Yeah.
Right. No, I think it's not, you're right. You're like, sorry, I'm still trying to contend with this like sunshine. Anyway, whatever, I'll get over it. Yeah. I wanted it to be a bit of a question, but I also wanted to let it be that behaviors that in one character might seem totally self-destructive in another character might actually be the right thing.
Mm-hmm. I liked that there seemed to be also mirrors, I think, mirror of what you're supposed to do, let's say, as Elaine, as a mother, as that role, versus her sister Minnie, or Fancy's aunt. Like, well, what are you supposed to do as a mother, like that way? Or how are you supposed to be as a young girl? And I liked that you gave those options, I think.
You're good.
As well.
No, I'm glad to hear that, because that in some ways is not deliberate, but I think is just sort of a belief system I have, which is like, there is no supposed to ultimately, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very specific.
Mm-hmm. And as a writer who has mastered, I think, short stories and novels, or long form, how did you decide whether this story would become a novel? And were there moments or surprising elements that I think like convinced you to expand the story?
Well, it's interesting because I know there are quite a few writers that will write a kind of longer story and then feel this is going to be a novel. Or I'll see that with students a lot, that they'll turn in something, and something in like I think Jonathan Lethem calls it like the DNA of the sentences or something feels novelistic as opposed to short story. And I can really see that in other people's work. But for me, it feels like they're very different. Like it doesn't feel like I've ever had a short story that then I can expand, because there's some way that the short story is closing down. Like hopefully the meaning opens up, but my drive as the writer is to like, get that thing packed in there and then let it out, and it's a very different sort of more sort of brutal process in that way. Like not brutal, painful to write, but just in terms of pacing, in terms of something. Mm-hmm. So it feels very different with a novel, because with a novel, I feel like each scene has to open up. So you have to be like, I'm writing something and I still don't know. So it's going to open up, and I actually want to slow it down. I actually want to spend longer in this tent, or I want to like hang out with these characters. So that the thing that feels to me really tricky and it takes me a while to find the sort of collection of characters that can move forward with a novel. I was talking to a student a few years ago that I've thought of often, who's a wonderful writer, and she said, I just keep reaching 100 pages and then stopping. And she would just be like, there's something about the 100 pages. And I just, had I had the time, I wanted to be like, show me those 100 pages, because I bet the rest of the book is inside those 100 pages. Like, you have raced through some, I would bet money those scenes went too fast and you have to slow them down. And if you slow them out, there's 300 pages in there, but you may have already written the beginning and the end, but there's something in the middle to pull forward. And that's the sort of very different quality of novel writing for me. And so the thing that feels tricky is like how to get to that space where this collection of characters is kind of, I know something about them, but I also don't know a lot about them. And so I want to hang out with them for years and for many pages. And I feel like it often will be that then something will happen and I'll lose interest. So I have to kind of backtrack and go back and say, like, I've been talking a little bit about how early on with the pages of this book, I was very attracted to the word aunt, and I didn't know where the mother was, but I had Francie's voice and she was talking about her aunt a lot. And I thought maybe the mother was dead. And so I wrote some pages with a kind of mysterious death, and they didn't work. They just didn't have a kind of pull to them. So then I think the mother resurrected, but then it was like, well, what's her deal? Why is she with the aunt? And then I think some of those scenes, the scene we read, kind of emerged from that and ended up becoming the opening of the book and taught me a lot about the sort of crew of characters just from that scene alone.
Mm-hmm. I thought as well, the dialogue that you had sort of puncturing this reverie in the novel was, were those the voices that came to you or that you felt were necessary to be shown in a way that perhaps could not be shown in the memories or in the plot?
Yeah, I think it felt, how it probably emerged. This is how the writing process is so wacky, but I think this is probably true. And I'm only kind of just coming to this now, but Maggie Nelson was once talking about how certain formal aspects would have to get in place, and then she could kind of let the content flow through whatever choice she'd made stylistically. So with Lemon Cake, there are no quotation marks. And a lot of my stories, there are no quotation marks. And some people are very opinionated about that. It's really interesting. And there's plenty of writers, certainly, that I was, Jane Ann Phillips, there are just so many writers that I was, Cormac McCarthy, I think, James Joyce in Dubliners has the little line. Anyway, there's plenty of this modeled that I found inspiring. But I did kind of want to try to use quotation marks for this book. I just visually wanted to see what it felt like. And maybe because most of the scenes that are the dialogue scenes don't have quotation marks because they don't look right with quotation marks. I think they may have initially come from a little stylistic rebellion, where I was like, fine, I'm just going to do this scene without quotation marks. And then it had a lot of push to it and I wanted to keep it. And later scenes, I wanted to use the quotation marks and I just wanted to try out both. So again, that feels like there's some way that my mind could get occupied with this very mundane question of quotation marks. And then the material could sneak in. Sort of, I could be occupied with this other thing. And then the unconscious stuff could sort of sidle in.
Mm.
Wacky. But I think that's probably true. I think that probably is how it happened.
And could you talk a bit more about the process of writing this novel? Did you enjoy it? How long did it take you?
Sure. So it's always kind of a process of enjoying and struggling. I think that's always what writing feels like to me. But I also believe kind of strongly in the idea that it should be I have to be engaged. I have to be having fun on some level with the pages in order for those pages to see the light of day, because the pages that I really don't like writing are usually very boring. So if I'm really bored with what I'm writing, I just will not work on that. And usually those pages just fall away. So, and I have 7-year-old twins, and I started the book when they were about 6 months old. And I started with about 10 minutes a day because they had 2 naps a day at that time. And during the second nap, I would just carve out a little 10-minute block. And seedlings of the book sort of emerged from that. And there's a writer named Cheston Knapp who has a wonderful collection of essays and used to work for Tin House. And I remember talking to him about the 10 minutes, and he said, 10 minutes is infinitely longer than nothing, which I thought was so beautiful and so true, that it's like the rupture of time, that you think you don't have 10 minutes, and you think 10 minutes is nothing and will not get you anywhere with your writing. And yet the space you inhabit for those 10 minutes is different. And it would make me, it meant like that part of me got a little foothold again. And then as they got older, I could do 20 minutes. And then when they were in preschool, I could do a little more. And then like by the time I had kind of a novel to manage, they were in school. And so then I could go back to what was like an hour and a half to 2 hours, or certain days even longer if I was trying to read through the whole book. So I think the novel was affected by that. And I think it was hard because of that, but also some of the really short scenes came out of like these really short spurts. And I think it was both a pleasure in some ways, and it was a struggle. There was one point where I was trying to redo the beginning a little bit. And I was just pacing in the little office space that I used to write in. I was just pacing. I could feel the resistance of not wanting to write. I could feel it like it was right there with me, like a real wall. But it was like I just tried to sweat it out, and then it passed. So it is like Murakami has this great book on running marathons, right? And writing novels, and what to talk about when we talk about running. And it's also just a great model, I think, for the bursts, which feel wonderful, and the plateaus, which feel terrible, but how they're all very, very normal. What about you? Can I toss back to you for a moment in terms of process?
I mean, I feel a sprinter in that regard. If nothing comes, nothing comes. And I had to get used to it, I think, not blaming myself for not writing in certain periods of my life, but when it does come, it's like an all-nighter, and I feel like a college student again.
Right.
They're not no one's judging me on the other side.
It's free. It's your time. Yeah.
I do want to take in some Q&As because I think it links into the first question that Andy Rowe has. He says, "Hi, Aimee. Many writers have found it difficult to write given the current climate. How has it been going for you? Working on anything new?"
It's a great question. It is difficult to write. It's initially I felt like it was really hard to concentrate, and it's not like it's easier to concentrate now, but maybe it's just, there has been some adapting that has happened in terms of just like this weird new, the new normal people talk about. So I am back to very small amounts of time. So 15 minutes, today was 15 minutes. If I can get 45 minutes, that's amazing. But and I think the rule that I have that I really stand by is it's simply having the time and just delineating that time and using that time, even if it's 15 minutes, and you don't really have to do anything. You can just sit there. You just can't check email and check your phone. It has to be this sort of, I think Anne Lamott is like, you're sort of waiting for your imagination or your unconscious to kind of arrive. And if it doesn't arrive that day, you've let it know that you are available. And if you don't, and I love that. I believe it, because I think it's hard when the stakes are so high in so many ways and there's so much despair. It can be hard to feel like writing is important. but I really think it's important. I mean, I actually think dignifying our processing that goes on below the surface of what we're experiencing is so important. It's so important for us to try. Like, it's so hard to process what's going on. He's still president, you know, like we're still in this thing. Coronavirus is still happening. Like, police brutality, like all this stuff is just still, it's all here. So it's really hard to process it because it's right in our faces and it's overwhelming. But I think because of that, the arts is one of the ways that human beings try to process things that are too large to think about. And so to try to participate that in some way and to kind of lean into your own, whatever bubbles up, I think is of great meaning. And I think it is a value system about what art does for human beings. And that when you do it, even if you're like, this will never be published, this may be published, this is amazing, this is the best thing I've ever written, wherever it fits on the sort of judgment spectrum does not matter because you're participating in a deeper process. So I believe that very strongly. So yeah, so I would say, Andy, yes, it is hard to write. And yes, I still think it's important.
I think now too, there's so many more opportunities to consume. I wish it was
Right.
not, but you know, to be a part of art and to sort of luxuriate in a way that isn't about, is this going to win X prize or is this going to be published, or, you know, and just to sort of be and connect in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. And it's like, you can somehow see a Broadway play like from close up, and I haven't done that, but I've heard it's wonderful. I mean, it's like a time factor. But right, I think we see how important it is. And like a friend of mine talks about it in this way of like, it can help you think through something. Like when you're reading something, when you're watching something, you can have your own thinking alongside the artist, and it can help you, you know, move through whatever thing you need to move through. And I think that gives us our minds, and that's so crucial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The next question comes from Stephanie Hammer. Aimee, you taught us Wind-Up Bird Chronicles at UCLA. Is that still your favorite Murakami novel? What new favorite books, besides or including the ones you talked about for the New York Times, are you excited about? What makes you want to write when you read them?
Great questions. So nice. Yeah, I remember teaching Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. It was so fun to teach that book. Is it my favorite Murakami? I also love Kafka on the Shore, and I just listened to the audiobook of Killing Commendatore like in the fall. It was fantastic. It was so fun to listen to and drive around. I so recommend it. It's and yeah, like like I literally this is the same, like having my thoughts while, like, he's such an excavator of society and his own psyche and the society's psyche that I was like, you know, I don't really believe in reincarnation, but I was like, is he Freud? Like, when did Freud die and when was Murakami born? And I literally Googled it when I came home, and I was like, did Freud become Haruki Murakami? And there's a few years between them, but I do admit that I did that.
Is it one of the most Googled?
Right. It was like, because I think Freud apparently did a psychoanalysis on himself, and I feel like Murakami is doing that a little bit. But he's also sort of putting Japan under a microscope, and he's putting America too, because I feel like there's a lot of, you know, wonderful kind of awareness. So anyway, so that, and then so many books that I am excited about. Like I just read, for an interview, I read this book, like I was interviewing her, The Knockout Queen by Rufi Thorpe, which was an amazing novel. It's like a wonderful, beautifully written book that I just so recommend. And then I'm about to read, in fact, I can show it right here. Here it is. Signs Preceding the End of the World. It's
so good. It's so good.
Okay.
The language is so good.
So amazing. And he is like you know, they call him in the quote, Mexico's greatest novelist. Anyway, right. So I'm very excited about that. I also just got Pricks in the Tapestry, which is Jameson Fitzpatrick's book of poems, because people have been posting some of them on Twitter and they're so moving. So that's very exciting. And also reading, this was one that was on the Fire This Time, which is, and I reread The Fire Next Time, the James Baldwin, which was just so good. And then this is Jesmyn Ward's Anthology, where she asked a lot of really great writers working today to talk about race. And so all of those are sort of in the mix, but I'm also still endlessly finishing War and Peace because it's taken me forever. I was talking about, it's like I'm edging closer to the end, but it's really long.
I think I'm still finishing that book from high school.
Right. There's a lot of war. There's so many war scenes. Anyway, so this makes sense.
The next question comes from Virginia Morris. How do you talk yourself through the sweaty times when nothing comes?
Nice. Thanks, Virginia. I think some of it is that it's happened enough to know that it doesn't mean anything, and that's been helpful. So even though it's really uncomfortable, like it really is uncomfortable, but maybe like when I'm in a really good space, I think there's a little thrill at being like, it's uncomfortable, but that means something's actually close. Like I'm putting up the wall because something is a little scary. So I just need to try to hang in there with this. But that's when I'm really aware. And most of the time it manifests more as like, I'm so bored, I'm sleepy, I'm uncomfortable, I want to check my phone, and sometimes I succumb to that. But I think it's just trying, I guess, to keep putting my faith in this idea of just sitting there being the gesture that needs to happen, and no other thing, because the revision, the work, like that stuff can happen kind of on its own in a different way once the work starts to get generated. But it's the waiting that I think is the hardest part. And there, like I've quoted Adam Phillips before, he has this great essay on boredom, and he talks about this boredom as this kind of waiting space. And that if you can sort of wait through the boredom, or because it often does feel like boredom to me when it's the most unpleasant, because I just want to leave. When you're bored, you want to exit. And so to kind of wait through it, and then there's something on the other side. So
it's so inspiring.
It's not like it, there's plenty of days when I'm just like, ugh, this is a horrible task. But I think what's cool is to be like, that's fine too, actually. It can be a really shitty writing day, and you just show up the next day, and like you're not in the same space. And so and the other thing I feel like is some people are like, you have to write down that sentence or it'll be gone forever, and you have to be so precious about every thought. And it's like, well, I mean, maybe there are writers who like need to write down the sentence because they're so brilliant that like, but even those, I just feel like the stuff comes back. So it's like, you can let it go. You can have this time that you do the thing, and then you can let it go, and it will return. And it like which I also find that very relieving and extremely true. It's not like you get one shot, and if you're having this brilliant moment, that's the brilliant moment, and it's going to fleetingly go away. It's like, no, if you're having that moment, you'll have it again.
I think on that notion of returning, Johanna writes, question, hi, Aimee. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Since I was introduced to your work a long time ago, it has felt like home to me, which is an ever harder thing for me to find. Do the worlds you inhabit in your stories feel like home to you? Do you feel more like a visitor or a resident of your worlds, or is it all one world to you?
I love that, Johanna. Thank you so much. And just that word home is so lovely. And yeah, I think they do feel like home to me. I don't feel like a visitor or a resident. Is it all one world? Yeah, it's not even separate from this world. Like it's just, it's the world made of words, and I like words, and the words have things underneath them because that's what words have, they're loaded. And so you put words together and things start to happen, and I feel very comfortable in that space. You know, like sometimes people will be like, did you ever want to write screenplays or TV or whatever? And it's like, well, no, because the words don't make that up. It's image based, and I like hanging out with the words, and I like where the words take me, and they make me, they open something up for me. Like I really feel, so I feel like it's this world, but somehow abstracted slightly through language and made new through language. But yeah, and it's also so, because I am so restrictive on my time and have that as such a kind of firm rule, then it feels like they live together in that space. Or it goes back to the 10-minute rupture of like, that is a space to enter, that 10 minutes, even if I'm not doing anything. It's a different space than regular time. It's moving out of dailiness into dream, even if the dream has nothing in it that day.
I think and now that we're talking about change, Nicole White, hello from Northern British Columbia, I'm guessing. I don't know how to word this question exactly, but I've been recently reading The Bloody Chamber and recalling your own Bluebeard story, which I also just read in that Bernheimer anthology, and some of the other fairy tale-esque stories in Flammable Skirt. Sort of thinking of these stories as some kind of broader conversation about how narrative changes over time, and wondering about your thoughts on this process and evolution.
Thank you, Nicole. And the Bluebeard story, I think you mean probably there was one in Tin House. And I'm wondering if it's that you mean that some broader conversation, narrative changes over time, meaning like fairy tale stories from Flammable Skirt versus Bluebeard story being, I think that might be what you mean, Nicole. You can feel free to adjust in the chat if you want. But I think something that has shifted for me a little bit in terms of, like I still, I teach a fairy tale class at USC, and we reread the certain tales over and over again. We have like a whole Bluebeard day, and it's made me think about Bluebeard so much. And it's so applicable to everything. Like it's such a great story. And like, even like with Harvey Weinstein, there was so much of like, I'm going to give you this thing, but you can't tell anyone, you can't go in the room, but you also have to go in the room, because if you don't go in the room, I'll kill you anyway. Like, it just feels like there's this sort of this trickery with Bluebeard that's so insidious. But so I guess the question, I think because of that class, what's happened a little bit is I have wanted to retell certain fairy tales more recently. Like I would say some of my more recent fairy tale stories feel more driven by retelling a specific story than by necessarily making up my own from scratch, but I still feel like I really like that too. So, but like Helen Oyeyemi has this great book, Mr. Fox, where she's sort of taking the Bluebeard story, the British version of Mr. Fox, and she's just telling all these fox stories, and it gets like, it just keeps changing, and she kind of brings in the world, and then at the end, it gets very moving in this kind of surprising way. And that's, I think, such a model for taking the story and like using it, but then letting it morph so completely. So yeah, I guess I think of the fairy tale as this kind of nugget of storytelling that taught me so much as a kid, and that I still am interested in enough to every year reteach in this class, but that because of that, it seems to kind of unravel and fray in really interesting ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nicole added Bluebeard and Angela Carter, her feminist take, or your feminist take particularly. And I think you were talking about that, about rewriting it, I think through.
Oh, right. Yeah. And thinking of her, well, she does this incredible, the Bloody Chamber story. The book is The Bloody Chamber, and then the story is just a retelling of Bluebeard that is so good. And it is feminist, but it's so complex. Like, I think of Angela Carter in a wonderful way as both championing women as strong characters, but also I feel like her big belief is like our wildness and how we've been over civilized, and how do we return to like a sort of animalistic self in a way that gives ourselves our bodies back and our lustinesses back. And like that, the women, of course, just sort of spring to life in that, but so do the men. Like and everyone is sort of, other people are kind of trapped behind masks and societal norms that, so I just love that about her. So inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Back to fairy tales. Joyce Russell asked, Lemon Cake and Butterfly both feature a sensitive child, completely agree, surrounded by loving but troubled grown-ups. I'd like to hear you talk about that. It's so poignant. And were you sitting around wondering when the New York Times was going to finally do a by the book interview with you?
For the second part first, I was not wondering, but I was so tickled when my publicist was like, they're up for by the book and you can do it. It was just so fun. And they give you a few weeks so I could just like really think about it. And I had a great time. And it's just fun to talk about books and get a little drawing, like the whole thing was just a total treat. So I love that. But thank you. The Sensitive Child Surrounded by Loving but Troubled Grown-ups. I guess I'm so interested. I mean, it's hard for me to like know if I would describe myself as a sensitive child. I just feel like I, as many kids, just soaked up a lot. And I think kids often do. I think there are kids that don't as much, but I feel like I tend to know more of the kids that do. And I think it's like writers, certainly, where it just feels like children are aware, but they're aware usually without access to language about their experience. Like you just take things in deeply, viscerally, and then later can try to think about what happened and what did that mean to you and what did you feel and what are the words for those feelings and what does that mean? And that process, I think, is so powerful. So I guess I think of that, in terms of grown-ups, like the kids are just picking up on whatever's going on in grown-ups, and that there are grown-ups that are going to be more troubled than others, but that every grown-up that a kid is around, they're picking up on stuff that, there's no grown-up that isn't leaking stuff out. And there is no kid, I think, on some level that isn't picking up on that. So I think I do find that relationship very meaningful and interesting and maybe sad at moments, but also kind of incredible because children are so interesting and because we all were them.
Still dumb. That's good.
Like we just couldn't get here without going through that thing. That was really intense, and Flannery O'Connor's quote of like, you have enough material in your life just by living through childhood is absolutely right. Because it's like some writers are going to have certain very momentous experiences and they're going to write about them directly. But any person who's looking around with some sort of attunement to what's going on has plenty.
Yeah, it makes me think of when I was teaching at School of the Arts and I was sort of teaching a whole department and we'd go on field trips and they would be like, Ploi, you're the adult, like you're the one that has to deal with the money or you're the one that has to make sure that we don't die on this trip.
Because they were they
teenagers, like 14.
Teenagers, oh my God, totally right. Right, and you were like, oh right.
I think that too. A comment from Elaine. Hi, Aimee. I've been such a fan reading Willful Creatures, and I'm always amazed by your imaginative details and plots and writing. I think we can all agree on that. Any last questions?
I so appreciate the questions, and I so appreciate getting to see some of you. It's just it's really nice, and even just to see names and the other thing, it's lovely for me.
Are you going to teach back in the fall, Aimee?
I am. It's all online at USC because LA's numbers are still going up. Mm-hmm. So in some ways that's relieving, and I'm teaching workshops which are doable online, actually. It's not the same, but it's pretty good. So I will be teaching that class.
That sounds so fun.
It's fun. Yeah, it should be fun. It's fun to think about different things to bring in and, all of that.
It looks like there are no more questions. So I just wanted to pop back in and thank you, Aimee. This has been wonderful. This has been a delightful conversation. Thank you, Ploi, also for joining us and for leading the conversation. If you guys don't have a copy of the Butterfly Lampshade, you should get one. As I mentioned earlier, Booksmith has some signed copies. We'd be happy to send one right to wherever you are. And we're offering free shipping throughout San Francisco and the East Bay right now. Yeah, thank you again for joining us. Check out some of our other upcoming events. I hope we can all meet in person in the nearest future. But until then, please take care and be well. And hopefully we can see each other in other Zoom meetings. This has been really nice.
Thanks so much, Evan. And thank you again, Ploi, for those wonderful questions and reading and for your fabulous work.
Oh, thank you. I hope we meet soon.
Yes, me too.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.